Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Hornstein. Welcome to the No Not Crazy podcast, where we explore the invalidating messages we internalize, their effects on our lives, and the ways we can free ourselves from them. We've all had those experiences that make us question ourselves and even sometimes feel a little crazy. Let's stop accepting the idea that there is something inherently wrong with us and begin to appreciate that actually there is something fundamentally right. So join me, and together we can all feel a little less crazy. Today, I am joined by one of my best friends on the planet who I met back in 2015. We had a lot in common. We were both single moms. We were both out there dating. We were dealing with a lot of the same life circumstances. And she became one of my closest friends. Fast forward to 2020, and she came to me and said, I have something to tell you. So with that, I would like to introduce my friend, Gabriel Ayuso. We've talked, I don't know, a million hours. I'm really happy we're getting to talk here. So let's tell her that story. We talked about everything all the time, and I knew there was something going on. You weren't ready to share all of it yet. You said kind of over the course of time, like a year or so, you mentioned that there was something you were sort of grappling with, but you weren't quite ready to tell me yet. And then one day you came to me, and let's take it from there.
What I told you at that moment, I told you, I'm not a woman. And I mostly left it at that because it was what I was ready to share at that point. What came out from that is what happens normally, right? Is this place where you feel vulnerable and uncertain, and then you suddenly put a different world or relationship between two people, and you don't know how that works. And then you need to navigate that. And that's freaking scary because the thought, the fear is to lose everything. Even with the people you most trust, the fear is always there of losing and feeling, basically, which is what we are most afraid of, right?
Yes. I think everybody has that fear for one reason or another.
Isn't it interesting that as much trust there is between two people, when things are big, it takes so much time and like really dealing with uncertainty to be able to just, even with the people you most trust and you know will be safe. I mean, isn't that interesting?
Yes. Did it feel like you had to get clarity on it yourself more, like integrate it more before you were ready?
There's one reason why I totally subscribe to the name No Not Crazy, is because that's exactly the feeling, right? It's like when you're dealing with something that it's not been explored before or widely accepted, and you are seen in a way that it's not congruent to how you feel. Your mind goes to every kind of explanation before just facing the difference. Yes. Because differences are just plain difficult to deal with. I mean, we can talk about gender identity, but we can also talk about sensitivity, right? We can talk about like so many things. And yeah, it takes quite a lot of time to be, I wouldn't even say comfortable enough, because you're still not comfortable enough. I mean, that would be a lie. I mean, that's another point, right?
It's not a snap your fingers kind of thing.
Not at all. Not at all. Especially when, telling people about something that it's really vulnerable, that it's really difficult to share. I've seen all through my life that whenever you are invalidated, that feels huge, because that's somehow feeling that you are wrong or lacking or something. I've been invalidated for being a highly sensitive person too. Just I didn't know I was a highly sensitive person at that point, right? And that freaking hurts too.
Yes. Yeah.
We are denied who we are.
Right. I think there's something maybe even in that term, highly sensitive, that puts that measure on it of like, here's normal sensitive, and then higher, like,
Yeah.
which then leads people to say you're too sensitive and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Because on one hand, it can have totally that effect. On the other hand, it helps us understand that because many people don't have that level of sensitivity, that explains the reason why they don't get you.
Right. And why you experience things in ways that are different.
So I know this is one of the things that has actually helped me most. It's just actually gathering knowledge and talking with people who know, because that gives you the tools to really move forward when you really get the actual knowledge of what is and how it works and how it is not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So you come to me and say, I am not a woman. With all that vulnerability and the unknown of how I will react, or anybody else in your life, even though we love you and that you can trust us, but still really scary. And then what happened next? And how did it feel is the question. Once you had sort of taken that step to share.
There's kind of 3 stages to this. One is when you begin to realize, the previous stage is just feeling plain wrong. Like this is just plain wrong. And you don't even have the concrete grasps of what's going on or why do you feel so wrong. It's just there, which puts you in a permanent state of anxiety. So
like you felt like you knew something wasn't in alignment within yourself, but you weren't even quite sure what that was yet.
It's like you are wrong everywhere you go and you don't know why. And that's freaking awful because you cannot even do anything. You can just kind of survive, right? So that's what you do. You survive and you keep, trying so many different things on the planet to try to make yourself feel better, and go searching everywhere around you, like every kind of thing that can help you somehow feel better with yourself and with the world, and just plain freaking understand what's going on. The good part of that is that you learn a lot and that you grow a lot.
Oh, you learn a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 100% good. And
well, it's growing into your own skin, really, right?
Absolutely. And also learning to be comfortable with something that isn't, which is something that is invaluable, but that you learn later. Then one day, even if you're 45, which sounds kind of a bit late, but yeah, that's it. It's like you kind of stumble into what was that? And you didn't even know because you didn't have the representation or the images or the words or whatever is the case. And this can happen with many things. We're talking about gender identity here, but it can happen with, I don't know, something that comes to mind. Many women who have Asperger's or another
something on the spectrum.
Exactly. Yeah. Or something on the spectrum. For women, that's really difficult to diagnose because of adaptability, and you can come to it at a really late age and you didn't know, and then suddenly everything makes sense. So it's something like that, right? It's out there, then something goes click. When it's something as big as whether a spectrum thing or a gender identity or any other kind of thing, then what comes in is that I'm crazy. This is not possible. We are so ingrained with the denial that then all the invalidation comes from within. And that's when the no, not crazy comes in. And the other way around, sorry, when the crazy comes in. It's like, then it's like, and this is so interesting. The brain does every kind of hoop and jump to try to talk you out of what you feel is true.
Right. Well, I feel like that's because we internalize so many of those messages that we've received without realizing it,
Absolutely.
whether it's from society, from family, from wherever. And it just becomes part of our belief system or narrative without realizing it, usually. So you don't have the framework to even have that distance, right? Or that space to look at it objectively and say, what is this about really?
Absolutely. Exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, all these voices internalized from previous voices, or even not just voices, because it doesn't have to be spoken. It's just is.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Kind of, it just is, no? And that is so big that we internalize it so strongly that then it's easier to believe that we are going crazy, like literally crazy, than believing something that we feel is absolutely true. And like the flips and flops we'll do to try to rationalize out anything that is different and difficult.
Yeah. So, and it's true. I mean, it is really everywhere. It is infused into everything we do. Everything, right, has a message to it.
Absolutely. When you talk with anybody, you see you in a certain way. They don't even have to say it. It's the way, it's that side from the other, right? It's the way they see you. You could say, okay, but that's not me, but that's how you've been perceived. And then as social creatures that we are, right, we internalize that as the right way to be. The right way to be, with people we love, with people we relate to in society, in places we are.
Yeah, we all have roles, whether it's gender or, what role we play in our family. Exactly. The easy one, the difficult one, we all have.
Exactly. And getting out of that role, even when it is really difficult to hold on to it, it's so freaking hard. And it's important to understand that, because the amount of uncertainty that plays into breaking that mold, because let's face it, I mean, if it were easy to be ourselves, we would already be.
We would all do. Much healthier planet. Yes. And
yes. So if we are not, it's because it's difficult. It's really, really difficult, because it puts it in a place of plain uncertainty, and the feeling is unbearable. The fact of not knowing what is going to happen if you step into that is overwhelming. It's like it's one of the most difficult sensations, emotions, feelings to have, right? The not knowing. And the thing is that we won't ever know until we do it.
Sure. Do you feel like, in hindsight now, from the time and the understanding you have now, is it clear to you at all, like, where most of the messages came from that you internalized? Is there one way that you feel affected you the most in telling you who you were or what role you needed to be, and, stay in that lane? Or can you not parse it out? Is it just too pervasive in everything?
I have two different answers to that, and that depends on what we are talking about in terms of invalidation. If we are talking about invalidation about gender identity, for example, it was just plain in the air. It was just plain obvious, not obviously, but right, that you are born a certain way. That's what you are. You know what? You like guys, so you're born to do this. It's so ingrained in when it's supposed to be. And that's the hardest part of it, right? If it's so obvious, I really must be crazy. Like my brain really doesn't work right.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. We look to every other explanation. We'll blame ourselves rather than, no, this is the truth. Here's actually, I know what I know, right? Like,
exactly.
It's in there. Yeah. Yeah.
A different example is about relationships, right? And about being who we are and needing what we need.
Yeah. Been there.
Been there.
Been there, done that.
Done that. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Because how many messages we get about what we need is wrong. Yeah. And these are verbal. These are in terms of mood and feedback from the other person's behavior. This widespread belief that needing something is wrong.
Is wrong. Yeah. No, you're right. And we twist ourselves into a pretzel trying to be okay with what we're not okay with. We know something doesn't feel right. And we just keep saying, well, if I'm more this, or if I'm less that, or I'll just, I shouldn't be so blah, blah, blah. And we just contort and try to make something work. That's not going to work, because it's
And
not
it's
true.
never
It's
gonna
not true
work,
for us.
ever.
Right. Absolutely.
Ever. And we believe that. I mean, how many times did I tell myself, at that time, it's true. It's just because I'm too needy. And then actually you realize that, come on, the other person just wasn't available. It's just that plain, right?
Right.
So,
right. Well, and we can know these things in our head, right? We can know all these things intellectually, but we don't always trust the feeling, right? Like we know in our head, it's okay to not want this. And in our bodies, we feel like something's wrong, but we can't integrate them and take that step and move away from what we need to move away from, or move towards what we need to move towards, right?
I think it's important to talk about this, because when you feel something, it's not cohesive. That thing you feel true is not as solid. It's not as solid.
Like as defined.
Exactly.
It's not as defined. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a word. It's not as defined. It's something more subtle. It's something, that you kind of grasp with something that is not necessarily your rational mind, and it's not necessarily an ideal or belief you have.
Right.
So it's completely amorphous. But I think that's true with everything that is true, really true for us in ourselves, not just gender identity or everything. I mean, not everybody has the same experience here. I'm talking about mine exclusively. I cannot talk about anybody else's experience but mine. For me, it was not something as solidly as hating my body, but something way less tangible, more unsubstantial, which is about feeling right into who I felt I was. So that's when the difficulty comes in, because trusting something that is not solid and that you have not actually tested out because you couldn't ever,
right?
Because you don't dare to. How can you trust that, right? That's hard.
Okay, so let's go back then to your journey on that. What was that next stage? You're feeling like, I'm crazy. I must be crazy. What's going on? And then how did you then move to that next stage? And what was that next stage?
Yes. This next stage was something I talk out of order at the beginning, which is the two things that I think at least most helped me in this situation, which is first, knowledge, like understanding, really understanding. What's that, right? So learning. I for myself, I used books. I love reading, so I used books. Then I used YouTube channel and people's experiences. And then, which is something I really believe is important, it's talking about an expert about it directly, about your case. Because even though you get the knowledge and you get the ideas about it, and you begin, that gives you a basic platform from which to take the next step. And that next step is being able to actually ask someone who knows about that if that can be true about you, right? If you are not making it up. Oh, gee, that's terrifying. Even if you feel you're going to talk to somebody who will be open about it and knowledgeable about it and whatever, well, at least for me, the dread about being denied and about being told, nah, that's not you.
Like somebody telling you are crazy for thinking that. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, I went to this therapist, and they are an amazing person, right? But I was going to them with this question, and I don't think I've ever been as terrified in my life. At that point, I've had more than 15 years of therapist experience, not with them, even with all that experience, even with knowing how much that could help, putting that thing you are struggling with, that vulnerability, to someone who can tell you, are you sure? Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's interesting because I talk to people a lot, right, about just finding that truth within. And so it's an interesting question because, of course, there is a place for experts and we need that knowledge, but it's an interesting balance to think about, right? I mean, that's looking for validation from them, almost like somebody giving you permission, like saying, yeah, no, it's okay that you are this. That could be right. Or no, it's not okay. So that's interesting
Yeah.
to me, the way that was a piece of your process.
Yeah. And the right professional is the one that will hold all the open space for you to explore it without pointing you to any specific direction,
Yes,
right?
of course.
And then it takes us the courage to be able to, in that safe space, say, well, no, yes, this is me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, what
And
if
yet,
that person had said to you, no, you're just imagining that.
no,
That have done to your
that would have
process in your journey.
totally crushed me
Yeah.
at that point, because that's a really, really, really vulnerable place to be. And in that place, we need support. We need support, and it's okay to need support, and it's human, and it's completely legit. so it would have completely crushed me.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I'm a pretty stubborn person, so probably I would have gone on with trying to figure out that.
That's why we're friends.
Yes, but at the same time, it would have been a huge stumble. It would have put me back, probably. Well, I don't really know, because it didn't happen, but
yeah.
But it would have put me back for a while, for sure. It would have hurt. So I cannot even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So going back,
so that was your next step, right? So you started getting
exactly.
knowledge and learning,
knowledge,
learning,
mm-hmm. And then asking for support. First from, well, in my case, personally, it was through forums, because anonymity at the beginning really helps when you're dealing with something that
online
is
forums.
Really scary. Mm-hmm. Yeah, online forums. And then the thing is that every little step gives you one more little piece, a little bit of basically of yourself. It's like you put your little toe in the water, just okay, this is okay. So you step like little by little, and each little step gives you a little bit more confidence. Even each one of them is scary, and each one of those little steps is terrifying, but each one of them gives you a little bit more, and then you build from that. So yeah, knowledge and support. And there comes a point when you have the courage to come out to the people you love. And I say have the courage because fear is so that you never have all of it.
It's interesting because when we had our initial conversation, of course we've had many as you've gone through the process, you didn't seem, from my perspective, that afraid to talk to me. It seemed pretty calm on the outside, at least.
Yeah. It was just the outside.
Yeah. How did it feel once the words came out of your mouth? Right. And we're having our conversation. Is there some relief in that then?
This is a bit anticlimactic. How do you spell that? Anticlimactic? Okay, here's the thing. On one hand, it's like, thank God I can just say it. On the other hand, let's be honest here, it also puts on the table the fear of what is going to happen now. Because the truth is that then relationships go through a adjusting period, right? And it's not like that. I mean, you're putting the other person in a weird space, right? So there's an adjusting period. It's inevitable. And as much as if we're talking about you are the most open-minded and warm person in the world, but yet I'm asking you to change the way you look at me. That's not something that happens, like, oh yeah, cool. So it goes through an adjustment.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I mean, from my perspective, yeah, I was aware of that factor that you're talking about. And I think that's really important to acknowledge in this situation that, yeah, there's there are going to be changes in certain ways. It's not about good or bad. It's
No.
just, okay, there will be certain things that might be a little different. Right. And some of them are superficial and some of them are just, well, friends are going to have life changes. Right. I mean, it happens in all sorts of ways. You could have friends, and you're both married and you hang out with them. And then somebody gets divorced and suddenly like, oh, how do you relate in that context? Right. So I was aware like, okay, we'll find our level and how this plays out. But I knew we'd find whatever form that was going to take. But I think it is important to acknowledge for people that there will be adjustments. But I think there's situations.
And
life is never static.
yes. And the good thing, the interesting thing here is that actually there was not even that much to adjust. It turned out into nothing, right? I mean, because there was zero issue. And yet the fear is there, right?
Sure. Yeah. And understandably so, because unfortunately, there are times where people share something like that and it's not received in a positive, loving, accepting way. And, that's really painful.
Another interesting thing about the experience, for me at least, is that I had one really close friend that just couldn't deal with it, right? It was not exactly rejection. It was more like they couldn't deal with it and they just went away or whatever. Interestingly enough, that was less scary. That kind of rejection was less scary than denial, than close people to me saying, are you sure you're making it up? Or maybe you're confused, or maybe, I mean, the fear of being denied was bigger than the fear of rejection.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that's really, really interesting.
Right. Because then it's forcing you, they're staying in the relationship with you, right? But only in the version they want. And so it's sort of forcing you, if you want to keep engaged with that relationship, how do you do that? Right? You can't do it as yourself, but you can't also be who they,
they are doubting what you know about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the worst.
It hurts.
That's the worst, when you are kind of trying to come to terms with who you are, whatever that is, and the other person minimizes it. It's more convenient for them. But the denying of your truth feels way more hurtful than rejection.
It's a great point.
Yeah. And I think it's also a good point to get to internalize for us about ourselves. What I mean, if I deny who I am, I'm hurting myself more than if other people reject me.
Right. Yes. That you need to be able to stand in yourself. Stay in that place.
And we really don't have an idea how much that hurts. And my belief, and this is a belief, so don't write it down, but my belief is that is what causes our exhaustion and our pain and disease.
And patterns of choices that keep not working out.
Plus all of that.
Because,
obviously.
We're trying to make them from a place that is not really from our truth. Also, I think a lot of that leads to ways we turn against each other, our inability to validate ourselves, to say, nope, this is who I am. I'm good with that. It stops us from being able to do the same for others. And Absolutely. Even worse, sometimes leads us to tear them down, right? Invalidate them, or worse, Absolutely. Or attack their character, or, whatever it is. And that's part of why I think these conversations are so important, because I think the more we talk about all these things, the more we learn to validate ourselves, the more, and we also will learn how to validate other people, and it'll come more naturally. And I think it'll have a ripple effect, or, domino effect, and, hopefully heal some of the insanity of what the world is looking like these days, and the ways we all hurt each other. There's a lot of pain going around.
Also, if we could understand that what we take for granted is not true for everybody. What I need the most doesn't need to be the thing that you need the most, and that your need is as valuable as mine, even if they are different. That's the other aspect of the same thing.
Of course, validation isn't about agreeing. Validating someone's experience, having empathy for them is not about agreeing with them. It's not even about being able to put yourself in their shoes and even understand, like, I know I wouldn't feel that way in that situation. That's okay. You can feel like that. And still,
Yeah.
I know this is real for you. I get it. Yeah. We have to do better. Humans, we need to do better. Get our shit together now.
Yeah. Well, many of us are on it.
Okay. So back to you. I think we're in step 2.
Didn't work.
I think we're in step 2 of your, I think you said there were three stages. I think we're in stage 2.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah,
But
it was over
were,
a long period of time. It wasn't quite as
yeah,
boom, boom, boom in
yes,
the
exactly.
experience.
So it was the second that we were talking about, the second stage, which is the the gathering of information and seeking support. And the third is when those little steps, while gathering information, getting support, that allows you to build that platform from which to, kind of pick from there and take the most visible steps, which are coming out, family and people, and from there build up your new life. In my case, was like, okay, so this felt right. I mean, each step, this is the thing, each step gives you a feedback, and that feedback reinforces whatever is the right path. It informs the next step, right? So that's where confidence comes from, taking those little steps and getting the feedback. And so I build that confidence, and I build that, yes, I won't say certainty, because it's never certainty, but yeah, yes, that never exists, never. But that confidence to be able to build up little by little. Okay, so the next step, you take the next step. Oh yeah, the feedback, I feel like this, I feel like that. And learning to read the feeling, not so much what's seen outside, but the feeling. If it feels right,
really attuned to that.
Yeah, of how your body is responding to a certain thing, right? And like, I remember the first time I thought, I don't need to be a woman. This huge sigh came from the depths of my being, like my whole body relaxing. Like I could kind of feel my very cells relaxing, like like this huge weight off my shoulders. It's everywhere,
yeah.
Right. So this is a little bit of the feeling, right? When we come to our truth, it feels relaxing. I mean, even if it's scary, but in a place inside of us.
Yes, at your core.
It frees something.
Yes. So that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
So that's what
you needed to listen to. Yeah, absolutely. No, you have to be attuned to what's going on inside you. And I think I'm really glad you said that about the steps. We'll see how that feels. And then we'll take it from there. It's just, okay, let's see. And then, okay, good. Let's see. No, not good. Adjust, just following that path.
And it's finding it through course correcting, right?
Yeah.
And just feeling it and finding the way. This has the advantage that it doesn't put you in front of a huge wall that you need to scale, right? Because that would be even more scary, and it is to begin with. I cannot say how many hours of craziness I spent thinking I wish just knew, just the clarity and certainty.
And that maybe that does happen for some people, right? I don't want to dismiss that experience either. I think some people do have that clarity, and they, maybe just can't speak it yet, the fear of speaking it or something. So that may take longer, but that it may be clear within them sometimes, so it can happen in all shades of gray in between of how people go through a process.
At the same time, when we're talking about validation, we have that so ingrained that the doubt comes from within. And the biggest doubt comes in the way of not really knowing what we want, or not really knowing ourselves. And that's huge. And I believe that's an epidemic.
Well, and I think even when you do know, or some part of you knows that there's so many things that stop you from acknowledging it or going after it. There's,
I mean,
I
you
won't
asked
get
me
it
now.
anyway, or I don't have a right to want that.
I think it's always there. And as it is always there, on some level, we always know
What we want. Yeah. Or
or who we are,
who we are, what we need. Yeah.
whatever, what we need, who we are, what we know. And yet, it's like we don't have access to that knowing because all of the invalidation and all of the things that are in between and conditioning.
It's
and
like
beliefs
layers and layers. It's coats and hats and gloves.
Yeah.
It's shrouded in all these layers.
So in rebuilding up who you are, those later steps, they take you so far, way faster than any other way. At least for me, they did. I really do have examples, concrete examples about this. I have a friend, right? And they're amazing and lovely, but they need the certainty and the full picture so clear that they are completely stuck from even before I began. And they are stuck in more or less the same place because they need the picture so clear that it's impossible to move from that place. Because it's like if I don't see it completely clearly, and if I don't know completely, and if I'm not there already yet, then I don't move. Well, I'm here. Like little step by little step. I tell you, it's a wonderful place to be.
And that makes me so happy that you're there. We are all faced with all these messages and, we have different levels. We have different kinds of families. We have different environments. So sure, there's different degrees of invalidation we've experienced and support we've experienced, but some people are able to recognize it or come to this place of embodying who they really are in whatever that context is. And some people struggle for a lifetime, right? And never really get there. I'm so interested in what that secret ingredient is that some of us can overcome that and get to that place when others can't. And it's not about the life experience you've had, because plenty of people have had incredible trauma and they overcome. And some people have had less, at least overtly recognizable, difficult experiences can't. So I'm so interested in trying to get to that. So I always ask, what do you think it was in you that enabled you to engage this question, the biggest question of who am I really, and become that? It's always a process. We're always becoming, but that really are in a place where you are in your truth. You're living your truest self now.
What I believe, and we won't ever know really, right? Because probably there's so many ingredients to it that we won't ever know. But what I believe is that it is about the ability to deal with fear. And we could talk what we said before, right? About, getting information and support or whatever. But further from that, my belief is I had a long lifetime to learn how to deal with fear. And to take those steps, whether I was terrified or not. I mean, there's the fear, and then there's the fear of the fear. Fear, we all have it, right? So we all have fear. But if we let ourselves fear the fear, then we won't ever move. And I think that's the difference. If we believe that the fear and the threat is true, then we won't move. If we know that, it's there, it's there, and we take it by the hand and we walk alongside it, then
maybe we swear it a little.
Yeah. Again, uncertainty is awful because that fear and that doubt, which are completely linked, right? Doubt and fear go hand by hand. I mean, the fear sows doubt and the doubt sows fear, and like
it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. But both of them are born from uncertainty, from not knowing. So that expectation of certainty heals everything, everything.
That may be the answer to what my next question was going to be. If you were going to suggest one thing to anyone who is at the beginning of a process of discovering who they really are, or maybe in the midst of it even, what you think the most important step would be?
Well, first understanding the nature of uncertainty. Again, it's normal that you're not sure. It's normal that you don't know. Just try it out. Just try it out. Just try it out and see what happens.
Take a little step. Yeah.
Just a little step.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. And two last quick questions. What is your least favorite invalidating phrase? Because part of what we want to do is learn how we can mitigate invalidation around us. And I think part of that is being aware of what we hear and what we say to others. So I want to collect everybody's phrases that we have to be conscious of that we may say to other people and the impact it has on them.
Okay, well, okay, mine is not very original at all. And yet it just so hurts so much, it still does. So much. What it is, your skin is too thin or you're too sensitive.
You're too sensitive, yeah.
Even now, even after going through everything, this still hurts the most.
You're not alone in that feeling.
Yeah.
That one, smoke coming out of your ears. Yep. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you there. Okay. And then to end on a positive note and what we can do to make everybody's experiences better. What is your most favorite validating phrase?
Okay, here's the thing. For me, the most validating experience I've had wasn't through a phrase. It was through a non-issue whatsoever.
A non-issue.
So, a non-issue whatsoever. An immediate adaptation of whatever it is.
Well, so it may be like, okay, got it. I understand. We're good.
So for example, okay, so how are you feeling about it then? The immediate feedback of understanding that, integrating it as a non-issue, and then the answer according to that being integrated. I don't know if I make sense.
Well, I think I'll try to see if this is what you're saying. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. That there's acceptance, right? You put something out there, there's acceptance. There's a feeling of being seen and heard, and a feeling of somebody then also being curious and wanting to know more. I see you, I hear you, I accept you, and tell me more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Close enough. Close.
So no, absolutely not. That's 100%. Let's put an example. When I came out to my boss, I said, well, okay, what do you need? And I said, well, it would be lovely to have my email changed to, it would be lovely to, if everybody at the office could use my name, Gabriel, and if I could have the email changed with my name, that would be great. I had that afternoon. That same afternoon, I had that. That's what I mean. Yeah, okay, no issue whatsoever. That's what you need. That's what you get.
Yeah. I remember how poignant that was for you. You know, that
absolutely.
experience.
It was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it not only has been an honor to have you here to talk with me today, and I'm so grateful for that, but I'm infinitely grateful for our friendship. And it's also really been an honor, I feel, to witness this process. And I know it was hard, but it was beautiful to see.
Well, we're still there, right? I mean, you're gonna hear me complaining still for a while.
Well, vice versa. So But yeah, but it really, it's been, it really has been my honor to bear witness to it. And I just admire you so much. I know how much you went through, and I appreciate the ways you shared with me and the trust you showed in sharing with me.
It's always been invaluable to have you by my side. What can I say? Likewise.
So thank you so much for this conversation. I really think it will help so many people in all different situations, but your experience is certainly important to bring light to.
Thank you for always listening.
Anytime. Take care, everyone. Thank you for listening and being part of the conversation. Please find a way to validate yourself today. Maybe find a way to validate someone else too. And if you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also join me at No Not Crazy on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's build this community of validation together.